Here we go. Hello and welcome to the latest video on the Scott Ball YouTube channel. And today I'll be discussing the hot talking point in Scottish football at the moment. It's the appointment of the new men's national team manager, Sébastien Pocognoli. Very much come out of left field, this one. It's an intriguing one. It's a fascinating appointment. And I'm sure anybody watching this will have been feeling similar to me as to not knowing much about Pocognoli, rapidly Googling him to try and learn a bit more about him. So in this video, I'm going to give a bit of background into Pocognoli, who he is, and then what we could expect from a Sébastien Pocognoli Scotland team. So firstly, his background. He is 39, so still a young manager. He grew up in the Liège region of Belgium, where he was a big supporter of Standard Liège. He actually broke through as a senior footballer though at Genk, and quickly he made a name for himself at Genk, and he went over to AZ Alkmaar as a young player, where he linked up with Louis van Gaal, which was a critical point in his development as a player and a person. He said that he learned more under Van Gaal than under any other manager in terms of tactically and also as a person. He said that one of Van Gaal's main principles was the charisma and personality that football players should show on the pitch, and that is something that stuck with him. And yeah, as a footballer, Pocognoli was very successful. He got 13 caps for Belgium, and crucially and interestingly, I think he played in multiple different leagues. He played in Belgium, he played in Netherlands with AZ, where he won only the club's second league title alongside Van Gaal. He also played in Germany with Hanover, and then in England, which some people might be aware of, he played for West Brom. So in terms of his future coaching career, I think it's quite fascinating that he's able to learn from different tactical styles and environments across his playing career. And then, yeah, at the age of 36, he became a manager for the first time in Belgium with Union SG. He'd worked previously in youth football in coaching capacities at Genk, Standard Liège and Belgium, so he gave himself a foundation at youth level before he took on the role of manager at Union SG, which is a Jamestown Analytics associated club, alongside the likes of Hearts now, with Tony Bloom, and also Brighton. And at Union SG, his first managerial role, he was a glowing success. He won the double, the club's first National League title in 90 years. And yeah, he became known as one of the most exciting young coaches in Europe at that time. And that led to him getting the job at Monaco after only 1 year management, which was a high-profile job in Europe, where he had a mixed time at Monaco. Ultimately, he didn't last long. He was only in the job for 8 months, but he did show promise. There was a 10-match unbeaten spell, and I noticed that when his time did come to an end, the Monaco fan base were very appreciative of his efforts, and their criticism was more levelled towards the directors and the board members as opposed to Pocognoli. I think there was issues with their recruitment, and yeah, so ultimately it was a disappointment at Monaco. I think he took the job in 5th place in Ligue 1, and ultimately finished outside the Champions League places, which was the club's main aim. He finished in 7th place. But this departure from Monaco led to an opening for the SFA this summer. It's definitely a gamble in terms of the hiring of Pocognoli, but I think it's something that could prove to be a shrewd move. Pocognoli is very much in the modern school of thought when it comes to coaching, and I believe, given his links to Jamestown Analytics, he would have been on a list as a possible successor to Fabian Hürzeler at Brighton, I can imagine, if he was to move elsewhere. And yeah, in terms of ambitious up-and-coming coaches in Europe, he definitely fits that bill, and I think he would have been on the lists for a number of clubs. And interestingly, actually, a Belgian football podcaster, Scott Coyne, has come out and said that he was a name on the list to replace Rudy Garcia as the Belgian manager this summer before Mark van Bommel got the job. So yeah, that's the background on Pocognoli. In terms of what to expect as a Scotland fan, as a member of the Tartan Army from Pocognoli, I think number one, what we'll see is a clear tactical identity, and that is something that I would level as a criticism towards Steve Clarke, particularly at the end of his tenure at Scotland. You know, if you look at the 2026 World Cup qualifying campaign and then also going into the tournament itself, I thought there was no real discernible tactical identity. I think Scotland were kind of stuck between trying to be pragmatic and hard to beat, but then also trying to open up and be a bit more confident on the ball. And I think we were a bit out of sync with our pressing. And yeah, I think the performances in qualifying were poor, and then we saw that it wasn't sustainable in terms of results of the World Cup, where we disappointed. And what I think we will see under Pocognoli is a team with a clear identity. And looking into Pocognoli's tactical philosophy, I think what this identity of his Scotland team will be is a high pressing team with high energy all across the park. He places a high emphasis on the collective in terms of attacking as one and defending as one. And I think he wants his team to be high energy all over the pitch, dynamic. I think we'll see quite quickly from Pocognoli's Scotland team that there's going to be an emphasis on energy all across the pitch, and that will come with a high line at the back. There has been some suggestions that Pocognoli is some kind of all-out attack manager, and that is not truly the case in terms of his prior coaching CV. If you look at his time at Union SG, they were by far the best defensive unit in Belgium. They conceded the least goals in the division by a distance, but in his second spell in management in Monaco, this was the issue. they were very leaky. I think they were the fourth best attack, so that proved that his attacking philosophy worked at Monaco again, but I think they were the fourth worst defence in Ligue 1 during the season. In terms of his tactical style, if you're to compare him to other managers and other philosophies, my best assessment of what to expect from Pocognoli is the refined version of Klopp at Liverpool, late Klopp era at Liverpool, whereas in terms of early on in his tenure at Liverpool and previously at Borussia Dortmund, Klopp was renowned for his gegenpressing, heavy metal football, he called it, in terms of high energy all across the pitch, but quite chaotic and very quick in transitions and looking to run all over the opponent. And I think Pocognoli takes some of these principles in terms of a high press and looking to be quick on the transitions. That's something that he's acknowledged in terms of his coaching philosophy. But he also places high emphasis on control. And I think that he is less of a kamikaze, all-action type manager. He wants his teams to control the match in and out of possession. He said that, but then also look to play quick transitions where possible. Another thing I think we can come to expect from Pocognoli at Scotland is tactical flexibility and adaptability. If you look at his time in management so far, he used a 3-4-1-2 at Union SG, which was the most successful era of his coaching career to date. But that was crucially a system that was already in place at Union SG, and he acknowledged that. He looked to take the existing model at Union SG, which was high octane, high energy football, and he refined it with a bit more control and possession. Then at Monaco, interestingly enough, he used a variety of different formations. He used 3-4-2-1, he used 4-2-3-1, he also used 4-4-2. And I think that's what we'll see at Scotland. I think in relation to the players that we have available and the opposition that we play, I think we'll see Pocognoli using different systems. I think there's perhaps an expectation that given his success at Union SG, he's going to roll out a 3-4-1-2 formation with Scotland. But I would actually be surprised if this is the case, because if you look at the strength of the squad, which I think he'll measure when he comes in, I think it's very much in midfield area. We have our best players in midfield who fit his style of play in terms of high energy and pressing ability. And if you play a 3-4-1-2, you only really have the two midfielders in the base and 110 in behind two strikers. And I just think that's not maximising the quality that we have in midfield. So I would be surprised if he went with that Union SG setup as Scotland manager. If we look at the squad then and what to expect perhaps from his selections and what it means for the players at his disposal, certain players that I think may not fit his brand of football in terms of the high energy approach. I'm looking at guys that have been stalwarts under Steve Clarke, Lyndon Dykes, who in his pomp could press from the front, but that's not his best assets. He's very much a target man, bringing others into play. And given his lack of real form at club level in recent years and his lack of athleticism in comparison to some other strikers who I'll get onto, I think it could be the end of the line for now in a Scotland shirt for Lyndon Dykes. Similarly, Grant Hanley was a trusted figure under Steve Clarke. I don't think he will be best suited to this dynamic brand of football that Pocognoli will want to play. I think he'll want his defence to be very aggressive in the pressing, start with a high line, and I think maybe this is time for Grant Hanley to be phased out of the national team picture. And similarly, John Souttar, certainly recently in his career at Rangers, he showed a lack of pace and he can get exploited in that area, and I think that Pocognoli may look elsewhere in terms of the potential centre-backs. Kenny McLean's an interesting one because in terms of age profile, he's 34, and if you look at the next Euros, he'll be 36 and coming towards the end of his career. But he's still been at a very high level, captain of Norwich City. I saw he started the first game of the season. So there's no guarantees that he'll be phased out, but Pocognoli may look at the age profile of the midfield at his disposal. We've got a lot of young, talented midfielders coming through, such as Josh Mulligan, Lennon Miller, Tyler Fletcher. So McLean is somebody that could potentially be phased out. And then also Lawrence Shankland is a player who I'm not sure will be best suited to the high pressing style of play that Pocognoli will look to implement. I think he may keep him around because Shankland's a great finisher and Pocognoli may value that skill set perhaps in games against lesser opposition at Hampden, or if we need a goal he may look to somebody like Shankland from the bench. But in terms of the identity of his team going forward, I'm not sure that Shankland will be at the heart of his plans. As for the players that I think could benefit from the appointment of Pocognoli and who the Belgian may relish working with, other than the star headline names such as John McGinn, Scott McTominay, and the vast array of quality we have in midfield, who I think will be perfectly suited to Pocognoli's brand of football. And I think that's probably a big reason as to why he's been appointed. You know, the new SFA Chief Football Officer spoke of the data side of the recruitment process and trying to find a manager who fit with the quality of the Scotland squad and our strengths in terms of our squad. And I think that's maybe what has come out in terms of we have a strong midfield, a dynamic midfield. So I think Pocognoli's style will be in line with that. But other than names such as McTominay and McGinn, who I think will fit his style to a T, other players that I think could come to the fore include Ben Gannon-Doak. I spoke about Pocognoli's style of play and the importance he places on attacking transitions, being quick in transitions when the opportunities arise. Ben Ganondorf is our main threat in transitions, I would say. And as far as pace and dynamism in the final third is concerned, he's the main guy for us, Ben Ganondorf. I think that's well documented. And hopefully Pocognoli can bring a new level out of Ganondorf because he's a crucial player for the national team going forward. I also think that Robbie Ewer and Kieran Bowie in particular could become main figures for Scotland in attack under Pocognoli. I think he'll want strikers who can press from the front, are dynamic in their movement, and these two young guys fit that bill. Ewer, who's just got an amazing move to Sevilla, and Kieran Bowie, who's playing in the Serie A with Sassuolo. I think they are two guys that Pocognoli will look at straight away and think they can fit his style of football in terms of giving us legs up front, and also in terms of the off-the-ball structure, pressing from the front and setting those triggers. Also, one player that's never been capped by Scotland that I could see fitting the bill for Pocognoli is Calvin Miller of Hearts, who started very well at Hearts under their new manager Wouter Franken, who's a former opponent of Pocognoli in the Belgian top flight. I think Miller is, one, versatile, which I read that Pocognoli will value, and he also has dynamism and attacking threat in transitions. So I could see Miller being a player that is called up in Pocognoli's first squad for the Nations League matches at the end of next month. In terms of the potential lineup of the Scotland team with the players at Pocognoli's disposal, as I've touched upon, I'm not necessarily sure he'll go with the 3-4-1-2. I could see him prioritising our midfield strength and going with either a 4-2-3-1 shape, similar to Clark, but with a new emphasis on a high pressing game, or also 3-4-2-1, which is a formation we have previously used under Clark too, getting Tierney and Robertson into the same team. And it's also a system that Pocognoli used a lot during his time at Monaco. And finally, in terms of what to expect from Pocognoli, Scotland manager, I think a general freshness and an injection of life into the national team. I very much feel as if this is a new era for Scotland, and it couldn't be much more different in terms of his predecessor, Steve Clark. You know, Pocognoli's come in, he's a young manager, obviously he's from overseas, he's a foreign manager, and I think he'll be in tune with the modern demands of footballers. You know, he only retired 5 or 6 years ago. I think that his methods are in tune with, you know, modern European type of football, and he does seem a warm and likeable, driven character. So I think he'll come in with a fresh pair of eyes, and I'm very excited to see his first squad selection and what he can bring to this squad of players. And overall, just to finish with my overall opinion of this appointment, I think it's definitely a gamble. I think there's no getting away from that. You know, we're bringing in a foreign manager, only our second ever foreign manager following Bertie Vogts. And although that Pocognoli is a very highly rated young coach, he's only had 2 seasons in senior football management with Union SG and Monaco. And as such, you know, he's vastly inexperienced, especially at international level. And I think it's important to acknowledge that he is very much in the modern coach type of manager as opposed to more of a motivator. He's going to get down to business on the coaching field, but his remit as Scotland manager will be far broader than just coaching the players. You know, he'll have to manage the expectations of the media, the fans, and there'll be a high motivational factor in terms of getting the Scotland team up for big fixtures. So yeah, it's definitely going into unknown territory. But having said this, what I do like about the Pocognoli appointment is that he's a young manager at 39 and he's still earning his stripes and he will be hungry for success. You can tell that from his unveiling as Scotland manager. He is still relatively unproven as a manager and his future career depends on being successful with Scotland. You can see the hunger in his eyes and the determination to succeed with Scotland. And I think following the Clark regime, I think it's good that we've got something different. Already I see the Tartan Armour getting behind the appointment. I think everybody's excited to see what Pocognoli can bring to the role because it did get stale under Clark, especially with the brand of football, and that has been at the heart, I think, of the SFA's search for the new managers, somebody that can install a more proactive style of football. And critically, maybe the underlining point for me is that I think it's reassuring that the SFA have given Pocognoli a 2-year contract up until Euro 2028 if we're there, because at that point we can assess how he's getting on. If he's doing the business and he's brought Scotland onto a new level, great, we can hopefully extend his deal. But if it does turn out to be a gamble too big and he isn't fitted to the role, then quickly we can all shake hands and move on to the next one. So yeah, it's definitely going to be fascinating to see how Pocognoli gets on. It's going to be an interesting time as a content creator following Scotland as to what to expect from Pocognoli and assessing what he is going to bring to the national team. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and I'll be back for more analysis of what Scotland could look like under Pocognoli in the very near future. Thanks a lot.